Have all the facts with us. Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from Burbank, the ranking member on House Intelligence Committee. What do you make of the Rudy Giuliani dust-up this past week? I mean, he comes out and says the president did know about the $130,000, or at least he paid back Michael Cohen, and then the president says, well, he's a great guy, Rudy, but he didn't know all the facts. What's your take?
My take is that this is Rudy Giuliani being himself. It's all about Rudy Giuliani. Now, the problem is it's also all about Donald Trump. So these two are bound to conflict, but this is a legal team that hasn't gotten its act together. It can't tell a straight story. And of course, the problem is if you're not just trying to tell what happened and you're making things up as you go, you're going to run into these problems. Did the president know about it? Did he not know about it? Was this a campaign expenditure? I think they realized after Giuliani spoke that this could actually create more problems for the president because it then makes him part of a potential scheme to get around campaign finance laws. So they're having second thoughts about this strategy, but it certainly looks like the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
In fact, Mr. Giuliani told Fox News this was a personal incident and it was not related to the campaign. But then he went on to say, imagine if she had come out and talked about the affair just prior to the election during the Hillary Clinton debate, you know, the impact that would have had. So he made it about the campaign.
Exactly. And you see this time and time again where, for example, they say when they fired James Comey, this was about his handling of the Clinton email investigation. And then Donald Trump goes on TV with Lester Holt and says, no, this was about the Russia investigation. This is the problem when an administration is not guided by the facts. It's merely guided by saying whatever is in their momentary interest. It's a real problem if this payment was made to shut her up before the election. And by bringing the president into it, saying the president knew about this, the president paid back, funneled this money through the law firm, they're implicating the president in a potential violation of our campaign laws.
Whenever you use the word funneled, it's not a good term to use, but that's what Mr. Giuliani did. Your committee, House Intelligence, broke down in a partisan fight. The Republicans issued a report saying there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and members of the Russian government. Respond to that.
Well, we saw really, and sadly from the very beginning of the investigation, the Republicans had a different mission than getting to the facts. Their mission was protecting the president at all costs. And we saw that from the very beginning when the chairman took that now infamous midnight run, where he went in the middle of the night to a secret source, which turned out to be the White House, and then presented back to the White House what they'd already given him and said it was new information. So that was the kind of investigation they were running, protect the president. In fact, we've seen a lot of evidence of both collusion and obstruction of justice. Whether that evidence will amount to proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a conspiracy to defraud the United States, Bob Mueller will have to tell us when he's finished with his investigation. In the meantime, even though the Republicans have walked away, on the Democratic side, we continue to interview witnesses in the Russia investigation and obtain new and important documents.
If the Democrats win a majority in Congress, or at least in the House of Representatives, can we see your Intelligence Committee? First of all, do you believe you'll be the chair?
I would certainly hope so. It'll ultimately be the leader's decision.
Right. And what happens then?
Well, we'll look at what's been done in terms of the investigation by Bob Mueller, what's happened with our own committee and the Senate, and determine what is left to be done. I can tell you the first step that we'll take, though, is we will make available to the public all of the transcripts of our interviews with witnesses. The Republicans promised to do this and then reneged on that, and I think they reneged both because of the evidence the public would see, but equally important, the public would see just how duplicitous the Republican members were during those interviews, how often they acted as the president's lawyer and not as objective investigators.
You wrote an op-ed piece for the New York Times on Friday that relates to impeachment. There are plenty of people, there are members of Congress. Maxine Waters talks about it every other day. You're very reticent to even bring up the word. Why?
Well, I tried an impeachment case in the Senate involving a corrupt federal judge, and I got to see, you know, what is required in terms of the legal standard and what's required just as a practical matter for members to be able to vote to remove a president. It's a very high bar, and I think it's a mistake to be out there pushing impeachment before we even know the full facts. Bob Mueller isn't even done. The president hasn't even sat down for an interview. There are at least 49 questions. Really 49 topics that need to be answered. Our work isn't done, and I would urge all the American people to wait until the investigation is over. If that should be necessary to go through that wrenching experience of an impeachment, it's better that we don't have a big part of the country thinking this was the conclusion we wanted to reach from the very beginning. We should be guided by the evidence, and the evidence is not fully in.
And finally, on Facebook, you weren't on the committee that grilled Mark Zuckerberg. What is your concern about this social media giant, and is it proper for the government to start to regulate social media?
I have a couple of concerns. The first is the degree to which, obviously, we had a foreign power manipulate social media to try to influence our election, and we learn more and more about that every day. We'll be publishing new ads that we've received from Facebook that were used, a new outreach the Russians made through social media. But honestly, I'm even more concerned about the fact that most people now get their news from social media, and the algorithms that produce what they show us are tailor-made for our likes and dislikes. So what they show you is different than the news that I get, which is different than the news our neighbors get, and it's causing us to live in these little information bubbles where we're not exposed to the same facts, and I think it's having the effect of dividing the country, and that global challenge is really what concerns me the most.
Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from Burbank, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.